G'day everyone and welcome to the Trekzone Spotlight. Matt Miller with you. I'm at RAAF Base Pearce as the filming road trip continues because it's ANZAC Day here in Australia and New Zealand. It's a day similar to Veterans Day in the US to commemorate and thank those who have and who continue to serve in the armed forces of our two countries. Well, joining me now is Squadron Leader Nick Bird from 453 Squadron here at Pearce. Nick, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, mate. Cheers.
So tell us a little bit about the spirit of the ANZACs.
The spirit of the ANZACs, as the way I see it, is essentially embodies a community spirit. I think the ANZACs, the reason the ANZACs joined up and essentially did what they did, answered the call, was they believed in something that was bigger than themselves. They believed in their community, their country, and I suppose back then the idea of king and country. So in terms of modern day spirit of the ANZACs, the way I see that, I still see that embodied in what I suppose the men and women of the ADF do, people who wear the uniform, but people who support them too. You know, you don't have to wear a uniform to embody the spirit of the ANZACs. You know, you can see it. You see it all around you, basically, in your community. Whether people are volunteering, you know, police, firefighters, so on and so forth. I think the spirit of the ANZACs is the idea that you believe and that you serve something bigger than yourself, and that's generally, you know, your community or your country.
And it was forged out of a desperation during the First World War, wasn't it? Back almost 100 years ago now. Yeah.
I think a lot of the reason behind why people answered the call with such fervour was that Australia was a new nation, and you know, nowadays we look at the part of the spirit of the ANZACs as being one of those events that really forged the Australian identity, and I think they probably willingly participated in that venture, knowing that what they were going to do was going to be such an important part of early, you know, Australian history. Yeah.
A new nation with new technologies coming up. The Air Force is now 97 years old. The Australian Air Force is 97 years old. So it's sort of been around as long as the ANZAC spirit. Is there a connection there between the Air Force? Is it stronger in the Air Force, do you think?
That's a good question. So the Air Force, certainly not in its present form, as in the Royal Australian Air Force, though we had the Royal Flying Corps in World War I, though we weren't there at probably, you know, the most symbolic of ANZAC events, the Gallipoli landing. We weren't there. However, you know, many of the Air Force's first members were there and did learn to fly during that period. You know, the founder of the RAAF, Air Marshal Richard Williams, he was a member of the Royal Flying Corps and was, you know, learned to fly in 1913.
And it's come a long way since the beginnings, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So the aircraft are a bit faster? Yeah,
a little bit. So I suppose balsa wood, wires, you know, cloth has given way to, you know, epoxies and, you know, all sorts of exotic materials and all that sort of thing, and you know, electronically scanned radars. It's such a far cry from where we were. So yeah, the technology, if that's what's happened in this 100 years, I can only imagine where we'll be in another 100 years. Yeah.
And that's the link for the Trekzone Spotlight today, really, is the science that's gone into the Air Force. In World War II, something that helped the Allies defeat the Germans was our development of radar, which really identified the German Air Force coming towards, you know, the London Blitz. What other science goes into getting an aircraft off the ground into a battlefield?
Yeah, the late 30s, early 40s, when radar was developed, it was quite literally bouncing radio waves off objects and receiving them and being able to paint a picture. Fortunately, nowadays, the well, we are more sophisticated with that, but we do still rely on primary radar. However, obviously with the computing power we've got nowadays, we can take those returns and use other devices. Aircraft, if we're talking everyday air traffic control, aircraft have transponders, so we have secondary surveillance radar, which is our primary means of separating aircraft and keeping them apart from each other, and providing data on who is who and what altitude they are. We take all that information, filter it through our flight data processors, and that way we can generate a situational display where the radar information is presented, not just with blips that tell you, that an aircraft is there, but it'll give you call signs, flight data information, their route field, level, speed, so on and so forth, and you can manipulate those fields. So the radar sort of technology that we're using there, even that has been around for years. So we're moving beyond that now to to the next generation, at least in air traffic control, next generation system where we'll be able to do very long range, essentially flight planning and sequence aircraft from huge distances out and be able to sort of plan accurately, which gives us improved, I suppose, flow control and efficiency at airfields to allow people to do what they need to do.
And using satellites now as well, GPS and those sort of things to aid in the navigation of aircraft over longer distances, because obviously as planes are getting more sophisticated and more fuel efficient, they're travelling further, they need to be controlled a little bit further on. Does that pose a challenge to air traffic controllers, supersonic aircraft?
With GPS technology, the accuracy is such that aircraft can fly very, very accurate approaches. And essentially all they're doing is following a line in space. Now they'll have an instrument approach chart that they'll reference to in the aircraft, and they are able to hand fly that sort of thing, but realistically the accuracy that autopilots provide and that space-based GPS technology can provide is phenomenal, and will get you down basically to the runway in extremely poor weather. So for air traffic controllers, aircrew pilots, so on and so forth, the space-based technology is really good for getting you in and out of situations where normal ground-based technology wouldn't really help you out a lot.
Now, Pearce is a unique base here in the RAAF in Australia because it's integrated its approach services with the civilian arm, Air Services Australia. How did that come about? Yeah,
Air Force was looking to rationalise some of its towers and air traffic control services, and one of the places that was identified for that was Pearce. Now, whilst we still need approach control here at Pearce, between Air Services and Air Force, identified that we could actually co-locate them in the same building, and that's what subsequently happened. So we share a facility with Air Services down at Perth Airport, and on one side of the room there's the Perth approach controllers, and on the other side there's the Pearce approach controllers. Now, whilst we still own discrete blocks of airspace, the fact is that the proximity of Pearce and Perth is such that we require seriously close coordination and agreement about who will control what tracks aircraft may be on, how close they may approach boundaries, to ensure that civil aircraft are safely separated and sequenced when they either depart in or out of Pearce airspace. And we handle many civilian aircraft that track north out of Pearce airspace every day. So it's an excellent relationship we enjoy, and it actually exposes our controllers to a different side of air traffic control that they wouldn't normally receive in a military environment. So for us, there's certainly gains in it. The technology that we're using at Perth Airport is excellent, and we have Air Services to thank for that. That's fantastic. But for the civil guys too, some of them are ex-military, not all of them are. They get to see some of the stuff that goes on in military airspace, and just how, I suppose, how intricate the traffic can be, and how we tend to go out of our way to try and help training outcomes for the guys who are learning to fly here.
Is military approach a little bit faster than civil approach?
I wouldn't say faster. It's
the jets fly a little bit quicker.
Yeah, sometimes, yes. Yeah, very much so. The flight paths and flight profiles of civil aircraft are generally more predictable. So with military aircraft, you can ask them to do things that you can never ask a 737 to do. If you need someone to make a quick smart turn, then your PC-9, PC-29, your Hawk, they're all going to be able to handle that. Yeah, 737 is not. You know, with 150 people down the back, the captain has to look after them, and that's his job. So how we control aircraft is probably a bit different. We're certainly not more gung-ho with that. However, I suppose there are certain expectations on military aircraft, military pilots. But again, having said that, a lot of these guys, the majority of these guys are student pilots, and so we have to be aware that we are controlling what is essentially a flying classroom. So we need to look after those guys and do the best thing by them.
And here at Pearce, some exciting things are coming. There's a brand new control tower going up with a little bit more floor space, I believe, in the cabin.
Yeah, you could probably play cricket in there, actually. It's it's fairly cavernous.
Now, they tried that over on the deep space dish over in Canberra, and it's not a good idea, apparently.
Well, at least the ball comes back to it every time. So, look, it's a great it's a great building. We're very lucky, and across the country, all of our towers are either getting rebuilt or refurbished. So very soon we're going to be the owners of a bunch of new towers and new office space, which is great for all our controllers and technicians and support personnel. So.
Now, you're also getting new aircraft as well. The PC-9s are getting retired, and we're getting new training aircraft. Yeah,
so the PC-21s will start rolling into Pearce later this year, I believe. They've already started being delivered to East Sale, so there's already some in the country, and guys are already flying them. But I think the first course that'll be on at 2FTS next year will be late next year. That'll be on the PC-21. So we'll still see the PC-9s for quite a while here yet.
All right, now the PR team would like me to ask you, what's the best part about working in the Air Force?
Oh, what is the best part? I have to say it's the people. I think like any job, at the end of the day, it's probably not what you did on console or outfield or anything like that. It's generally the people that you work with. So I've done quite a few postings now, and I've been very lucky to work with some awesome people. Like any job, there's people you probably don't want to work with again too, but I've just found that across the years, people in Air Force, and not just Air Force, on deployments and exercises and things like that too, you work with some awesome people from across the services, from overseas. Just the variety of people that you get to meet is just unreal. So, yeah, it's got to be the people. But having said that, being a controller is a pretty awesome job too. It's different every day.
And pilot isn't the only, I think the biggest thing that I have to take away here is that the pilot isn't the only job in the Air Force.
No, that's correct. There's.
They like to think they are.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Are we allowed to say that?
I suppose they're at the pointy end, aren't they?
Yeah. Well.
But look, no, Air Force is not all pilots. It takes a lot of people to get an aircraft in the air, most of which is unseen. But every one of those people, has a job to do, and pretty much loves what they do.
Well, it's a fascinating and complex machine to watch that works day in and day out. Thanks to the hard-working efforts of countless men and women, Perth's air traffic control is a unique example of how civilian and military controllers have had to integrate together to reduce the workload and streamline processes to keep everyone in the air safe. My thanks to Squadron Leader Nick Bird, all of the air traffic controllers, and to the Defence Force Public Affairs team for their support in making today's episode possible. My thanks also to all of those men and women once again who have served and are continuing to serve in our armed forces, keeping our country safe.